Hi, welcome to the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I'm Dr. Sarah Gordon. I'm the host of the show, and I have my friend and guest Andrew Schubauer, who's been on multiple times. I always love when he joins me on the show. And welcome, Andrew.
Hey, thanks, Sarah. It's always good to be here. I was thankful that you let me come on and share the energy in the space with you. I love what you're doing with the podcast. I really do.
Thank
And it's
you.
it's great to be part of it.
And I think we should mention to our listeners that we are both in Delaware and we're having a blizzard. So
Yeah,
we haven't lost power yet. We're going to try to get through this podcast episode today and stay on track with our schedule, but it's snowing pretty heavy out there. It's beautiful too. So sometimes you have to learn to just adapt to things that are outside of your control. So when we met last, it was on episode 42, and I highly recommend that episode if you haven't listened to it. Andrew came to me with this idea about, let's talk about self-efficacy and why that's important for performance. Because when depending on that level of belief in yourself, it really can impact outcomes of behavior. And so it was a great conversation, and I always learn so much when you come on and you share your wisdoms. And just to remind our listeners, if you're coming to us for the first time, Andrew is the founder of Mountain Wisdom LLC, and he's a life coach. He's a ultra endurance athlete. He's hiked thousands of miles in mountain terrains. He's part of search and rescue teams. So, and I'm not saying that to kind of, embarrass you. I know, it's just that when we talk about human performance and how to live quality lives, and I just think that you understand it. I really do. And so that's why I like to have you on the show. So,
thank
on
you.
that last podcast episode, you said something at the end, and I said to you, I think we should do a podcast episode. That what you how you wrapped it up. And it was funny because I had finished talking, getting ready to wrap up.
Yeah.
And if you go back and you listen to it,
Yeah.
he's kind of like, wait, I don't mean to ruin it for you, but can I say one more thing?
Yeah.
And it was a great quote. And I went back to it and I wrote it down. And I want to start out this episode, we're on episode 46, and we're calling it, cultivating a path towards enjoyment from performance and just like forward, like focus in your life, towards these goals to being present and present in the moment. So I want to read this quote before we get started. So you said in your words, quote, happiness. We should find joy in the process. Want to maintain your belief and a valid reason and why. Ultimately, it should be about enjoying your life or helping someone else enjoy their life. Increasing your level of fulfillment and joy when you shift your mindset inward, recognizing your why. Find ways to enjoy the process. That is always going to be one of the best ways to maintain your belief because it's easier to maintain your why. And when you said that, and when you emphasized, it's about enjoying your life and helping someone else enjoy their life, I thought that was such an important point to make, when we talk about enjoyment. Is it, it's not just always about us, it's about thinking about those around us too. So I love that quote, and I wanted to open up this podcast episode with that, with your words, and then just have this conversation about enjoyment, and why it's so important. And, we're not saying that it's not always easy, you have to define your
No.
hard and your why in that hard. But enjoyment is often the mechanism that we need to sustain discipline or performance when we're in those hards,
Yeah.
right?
Absolute 100%.
So
Yeah.
that's what we wanted to talk about today. And come at it from different perspectives, from a psychological perspective, a motivational perspective, and then physiologically, what it does for our body when we feel better, when we're more positive towards things, when we're
Yeah.
enjoying the things that we like. So that's it. That's what I thought we would talk about today.
Yeah. And again, it's kind of funny. So we had that whole talk on self-efficacy, and then this was almost a footnote that I did want to address, and that's why I agreed so quickly when you said, "Hey, we should have a whole episode on this," because it's true. Right? Our society is not built around enjoying our lives. Now, I know other cultures or other societies may disagree, but like look at all the leisure activities we have, all the access to pleasure we have, our focus on. But what we focus on more and more tools, we don't actually practice it as much as we think to. Like when we think about a lot of the things that we use to enjoy life, we have a tendency to use them as minimal coping mechanisms just as for survival
Hmm.
rather than using them in our day-to-day life in a way to enhance it. Now, and before we get into this, I want to be clear that part of this is I think it's important to define this aspect, right? So again, a lot of times like you should enjoy your life. And I know how many times, Sarah, have you heard that and you dismissed it as not important throughout life? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Well,
I
I think for me, and this these conversations are between you and me, or we're being open, we're being honest, we're being authentic, and unplugged a bit. So, we're not
yeah,
scripted.
yeah.
We're not scripted. I mean, we have, just so our listeners know, like we have notes, so we don't just like go off the rails and start talking about like totally different than enjoyment. But, for the most part, we're going based on our experiences, our academic experiences. Andrew studies all the time. He studies neuroscience and exercise motivation. Like you study everything. And going based on work experiences and just life experiences. So, you know, my life has, I don't know if anybody's life is a straight path. I used to always say,
No.
we figure out who we are on those curves. But for me, for enjoyment, and it's probably something I need to figure out in therapy, it always feels a little selfish. And I think that's where we struggle as a society and as a culture. Like because if you look at other cultures and they have more leisure time and they accept more, it's okay to sit longer during meals and take an afternoon nap. And I just
Yeah.
think we're very performance focused, which is great.
Hmm.
Um, I think the key is to be doing things that we enjoy and not just being productive, like being productive with things that we enjoy. So for me, I'm just learning this. I'm really learning this. I'm almost 60. I would say I just started to learn this in my 50s when I went back to get my PhD, something I really wanted to study. I mean, I worked my whole life. I sat in those desk jobs and it's like, I can't wait to get out of this chair. I gotta move. I gotta move. I gotta get
Yeah.
outside. I gotta play. Gotta get fresh air. And so I've learned this later in life,
Mm.
truthfully. So how do I define enjoyment? You know, it it's something that I've had to like start to learn that it's
Okay.
okay and then take steps to move my life in that direction. You have to have some internal, desire to move yourself towards things you enjoy doing. That was
Yeah.
a mouthful.
Well,
Did it
no,
make sense?
it did. It did. But what's
Okay.
funny is so kind of the way you explained it, it's true, but it's also indicative of our society. And that's
Okay.
why this conversation today is important. So you got a bit uncomfortable with that. How many times have you ever heard you need to enjoy yourself and you dismissed it?
Yeah, I got a little
Me too.
comfortable.
Right. Because at least American society, as a whole, we focus on performance and responsibility and our should do's, our have to do's. Right? We are. conditioned to be dismissive of our own enjoyment of life, our own sense of fulfillment, which is a big part of why I became a coach in the first place, because I know how terribly unhealthy that is. Uh, but but that's exactly my point. Like your reaction is a norm. And what I'd like to do is hope anybody who listens to this at the end of this episode that hopefully they can break out of that mindset and see it from a different perspective. As you touched on, um, it relates to performance. It relates like the psychological benefit. There are clear, defined psychological benefits, motivational benefits, which arguably, it's a different motivator, but and then like physiological factors. When we are experiencing joy or pleasure, period, our nervous system reacts differently.
Mm-hmm.
It supports action, right? When we're enjoying ourselves, it supports that action. It reinforces,
Mm-hmm.
right? When you look back at like basic psychology, operant conditioning, it's like reward-based, positive, negative. It's how we learn what to do. Burn your hand on the stove. Don't do that again,
Mm-hmm.
right? Don't burn yourself on the stove. Cook a meal. Learn how to cook. It tastes better. Reward. Now cooking is valuable, right? It's enjoyment. Eating food that tastes good is enjoyment, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, but and don't get me wrong, when it comes to food, I'm terrible. I enjoy just being done with it. I am the most impatient eater you will probably ever meet in your life.
I am
Um,
too, actually, kind of. I'm always
yeah,
like,
it's
I don't
like,
have time for this. We should probably work on that. We should learn to enjoy
yeah,
food.
I have a friend who's a nurse, and I told her once, I was like, man, I wish I could get one of those bags that you can just attach so I never had to eat. It was just like the constant slurry of nutrients into my body, and I could just keep going. And
Well,
it's indicative of a problem that we have in society. Is like, why? Because that's a pleasure. That's a good thing. Literally nourishing the body, and I want to see how streamlined I can make it
right.
rather than compare that to compare the idea of a bag full of nutrients going in my body that they use for people who literally cannot eat compared to the fact that I have an option to make food that tastes good and enjoy it. But my natural, not my natural, my habituated state is to bypass it so I can do something else. And
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 I also think there's a little bit of learned behavior in it too.
so much. Well, that's what I mean. That's why I say it's
Like
habituated because it's not. That's why I was like, it's not natural
it's
behavior.
not
That
no, like
is,
and it
well, natural behavior is
and
to eat and sleep.
great.
Look at
And
an animal,
and
gorge, pass out.
we're not gonna go back into our childhoods on this episode. But
No,
I grew up with three brothers.
Mhm.
If I didn't eat fast,
It was gone.
it was gone.
So I
I
used to,
so that's hard, that's interesting. Like when you think about enjoyment and doing things in your life that you enjoy, you you know, think back in terms of like maybe why you don't let yourself, how can you change a behavior? Behavior change is hard.
yeah,
We know that.
it is. But yeah, so much of our lack of enjoyment is social conditioning.
Yeah.
Letting ourselves slowly get automated, right?
Mhm.
Before rational minds were developed. So again, we're not going to go in childhood, but that's why they talk about that. But like
All
you said, it's like
all the
that's
junk comes
why
from
yeah, I used to.
a
It
lot of
doesn't
it.
all come from there, but yeah, there's because you're getting hardwired when you don't have the capacity to rationalize and to critically think, right? Yeah,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
that aside, it's kind of funny. So I was also It was a dog trainer for a long time, and I used to run a shelter. And shelter dogs, rescue dogs, are incredibly food possessive because they and like some of the really great rescues where they have dogs in groups, they'll still be really food possessive for that exact reason
Huh.
because they had so much competition. But when competition was let go, it'll still take your dog forever. It'll take them a really long time. Like a lot of dogs that are food aggressive that came from unfortunate homes or like shelter situations, that's part of the reason why, because they learned it's like it was survival. It wasn't about enjoying the food or experiencing it. It was just, I need to get this in as quick as possible, and that's it.
Okay,
And it
so
takes a long time to unlearn that. But I
can I
am
say
getting off
what?
track and I recognize.
No, no, no. Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah.
No, I think that was a great example because when we talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs,
Yep.
when we go up that hierarchy and we talk about self-actualization is very intertwined with enjoyment. And
Hmm.
what Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us is that we start out with these survival needs.
Hmm.
When we can't meet those basic needs of, food, shelter, safety, like it's hard to think about, oh, I want to, do whatever this great goal is in my life because you're just really worrying about surviving. And that's a really
Hmm.
scary place to be. And, I think we need to recognize that, we're all in different situations in our lives. And, and if you're in kind of like
Hmm.
that type of space right now, or you just, then please ask for help. Go out and seek help,
Yeah.
however you can within your community, within your family, you know. So when we talk about enjoyment, I want to just make sure we understand like it's a process. It's a process towards self-actualization. And as we move through these stages, ultimately we want to be at this level in our lives where we are fully self-actualized, where we're feeling like we are in control of our lives, where we have autonomy to make decisions for ourselves, where we aren't scared to make decisions for ourselves, where we have confidence to make decisions for ourselves, and these are things that bring us joy and happiness into our lives. So it's a process. We're
Hmm.
all at different stages, no two people are alike, but this
Yeah.
conversation is really to talk about how can you kind of move yourself closer to
Towards
that
that.
as long as your basic survival needs are met and you're safe. And I know it sounds like a silly thing to say as grown-ups, but we don't know where people are in their lives. So that's just an important, you know, thing to say there. So, okay,
So
where
yeah,
are
that's
we?
actually so where we're at is actually, to be honest, I agree and disagree.
Okay,
I mean, part of survival is learning to find pleasure even when things are rough.
okay,
That's how you start getting out of it.
okay.
And I say that because I have lived for the most part, a very atypical, sort of erratic life. It's given me a lot of experiences, but because of my choices and because of my willingness to try a lot of different things, they didn't always pan out. And if I allowed myself to only stay in survival and do the necessities, I would have had a much more miserable life.
Okay,
And I feel like this is a good time to talk about it. I want to break down how I view enjoyment.
okay,
Um, so if you look back and you go back to the origin of the world, enjoy, right? Started old French word, right? Give joy to, right? Which is different from happiness. You know, like joy is more of a deeper emotion that tends to be derived from purpose and meaning,
okay,
which, to be clear, we define within ourselves. Right? Um, whereas happiness is, it does tend to be fleeting. It doesn't have to be. We can leverage, now here's the trick. You can leverage happiness to activate joy. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So happiness is more, think of it like an emotional reaction. You have an experience, it's pleasurable. And then it goes away and you go on to another experience. But again, give joy to, right? The origin, give joy to. So you take happiness, joy is about infusing an experience, whereas happiness may be about driving pleasure from an experience.
okay. That's interesting. I like that.
Joy is about learning how to infuse that experience, like giving joy to that experience. It's the difference between something positive happening to me. and doing it, and someone doing a terrible job that looks miserable, they smile and they whistle through it, right? We've seen those people. And
Right.
to be honest, we should all want to be those people, right? Because we want to be more joyful. But that's infused experience. What they're doing isn't inherently pleasurable. Or it might be. It actually might be. So that's the other thing. Like,
Can I say
again,
one,
purpose and meaning.
can I say one quick thing? I don't want you to lose your
Hmm.
train of thought.
You're good.
I watched the Eric Dane documentary last night on Netflix.
I don't know it.
Okay, so he just passed away from ALS,
Oh.
and they did this like final interview,
Mm.
and it was to air after he sadly passed. And I watched it last night, and it was interesting because I didn't plan to watch it the night before having this podcast episode.
Okay.
But what I saw was somebody that, made peace with this situation and in some way found some positivity in it. I think that's kind of, and I highly recommend everybody to watch it. He goes on with kind of towards some life lessons that are just so deeply profound about how important it is instead of us always kind of thinking like where we're going, what we're doing, like just and the title of this, like from performance to presence, like be in the moment. Okay. Maybe it's not exactly where you want to be in your life, but it's where you're at. And so find
Mhm.
some joy and cultivate enjoyment in this present moment somehow, right? And
Yeah.
so ironically, like listening to him last night, I was like, this is exactly what I needed to listen before this podcast episode today because it's just such a strong reminder. Like, we don't know what the future holds. So let's
Yeah.
find enjoyment today. Let's find enjoyment right now in this moment. Like this, I so much enjoy recording podcast episodes with you. I learned so much. It's great. And so, anyhow, it just made me when you were talking about like joy and just listening to him. I mean, you can feel the sadness too, but I think in all, it's just a great story about like being present right now in this moment, which I think is important. And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. I think
Yeah.
that's an important factor with enjoyment. When we think too much about the past, it pulls us like maybe, I don't know. We all have can't always be perfect. And we think about the future, sometimes we worry a bit. So when we're kind of like in this present mind and in the moment, we tend to I think we can enjoy it.
So the president is the only state that we can affect, right?
Yes. Perfectly said.
However, we can leverage that for our learned experience, which is our past.
Okay.
Like our beliefs, our purpose, our meaning, that all comes from learned experience, which happened before.
Hmm.
The difference is what we focus on. For instance, I can look at my life and say I have a very negative past. I have that option to do that. And there may be very real things that I can draw upon to validate that statement. Or I can look at my past and find moments of joy and happiness, pride, things that build me up, right?
Hmm.
And we'll get into that because that's part of building a life you enjoy. So
Okay.
if we have the time, we can get into that later,
Yeah.
um,
If
on
you
how
keep
to
me
kind
on
of start
track,
building that life.
if you keep me on track, we'll get there.
What? No, this is an off the rails conversation. That's how we roll.
They always tend to be.
I am an explorer. Roads?
You
We don't need
know,
roads. I barely need trails.
let me just say to our listeners, Andrew and I went on a hike once. It was snowing. It's snowing. Hopefully we'll go again.
Mhm.
We have a beautiful trail near where I live, where we both live. And we're like trekking along the trail. And he's like, I'm going to go off trail. I was like, wait, what does that even mean? I never ever considered going off trail. And we went off trail and we found this cool little space and we made a snowman. It's on, if you go to my social media, Instagram, Dr. Sarah Gordon. You'll meet Happy the Snowman.
Happy the snowman. It's Happy the snowman.
Happy.
Yay! Right.
Okay, let's get back on track.
Oh,
We're having way too much fun. Okay, go
oh
ahead.
yeah. Oh no, that'd be terrible. How dare we? Um, but no, so I mean, but that's the point, like infusing, so we can leverage any moment of our life,
Okay.
like the past, present, or future, but it all manifests in the moment. So our future manifests in the moment. Our past manifests in the moment based on what we focus on. Like what you're feeling right now is a result of your focus.
Okay.
Right? Now, I mean, and also the present. But if I'm focusing on something in the past, that can either bring me joy or sadness. If I'm focusing on my future, depending on what I'm framing or what I'm thinking about, that can bring joy or pain, right? Like happiness or pain. So bringing joy, like a joy infused experience, living through enjoyment or creating enjoyment really is an active process,
Hmm.
right? It's finding now that purpose and meaning. So again, I haven't seen the documentary, but let me ask you a question. If Have you ever in your life wanted to be miserable?
Well, wow.
No, I mean, no, no,
No,
right?
no,
Have you
no.
ever actively wanted to be miserable? Like
N-
consciously be like, I wish I could be sadder right now or less happy.
No, but I think you said something in the beginning of this conversation about our nervous system. And I think
Mhm.
that you know, you have to relearn how to process. Sometimes things happen in our lives. I call them curveballs, and
Mhm.
they really stink. They're just
Yeah,
horrible,
fair.
right? And your nervous system, when they come, they happen,
Mhm.
it's like that fight or flight response,
Yeah, it's an immediate response. Yeah,
right?
but
And some people are only comfortable in staying in that kind of,
mhm.
you have to unlearn um behaviors that, nobody wants to be miserable, right? Nobody
Yeah,
wants to like have, things in their life that just weigh them down. But you have to teach yourself what it feels like to float again, to lighten, the whole, leave the baggage behind, right?
yeah,
You have to get comfortable with leaving the baggage behind, throwing it away, and realizing that you can live your life in a different way. And that takes intentional, action-oriented practice. I tend to believe through physical activity, you can learn, you can leave some of that stuff behind, you can release it, or like you go out to the mountains and take your long, hikes and
take my
whatnot.
long
So I think,
walks.
yeah, I think we can put things in our lives that help us like retrain our thinking, because I don't think ultimately anybody wants to, and that's the whole health promotion conversation. I don't think anybody truly wants to walk through life feeling sick, feeling unhealthy, feeling, obese with disease and, can't walk and arthritis and, all these things that you just feel bad mentally, physically, your relationships. I don't think anybody truly wants to feel that way. The key is how do you get people to move their lives in a direction where they can have, feel healthier physically, mentally, and ultimately relationships, and they improve too. Did I even answer that? I don't know. It's the
I mean, you
snow.
did right at
All
the
I want to
beginning.
all I want to do is get out and play in the snow.
Fair, fair.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Okay, help
yeah.
now
I'll be out with the
now
dog right after.
unpack all that.
All right. So, to your point, the answer was no,
Okay.
right?
Okay, yeah.
The answer was no. And the key to starting to unpack that is that awareness. So you're absolutely right. We have ways of being, habits. You ask, how do we start changing that? Well, what's happening in our subconscious is what's already established and what's running. So that's why it's important to ask, do you want to be miserable?
No.
No. The end. Stop. No, I
Okay.
don't.
Okay.
Okay. Now you have that awareness.
Okay.
You don't want to be miserable. So then you ask, okay, how do I not be miserable? You take these your subconscious, your mannerisms, your behavior may be supporting your misery or your
Hmm.
unhappiness, right? Because we're running mostly on our subconscious and automated processes throughout the day, and our thoughts are too. So if you want to make a change, the first thing is to bring it up. So if I want to experience more enjoyment in my life, someone may be, okay, do you want to be miserable? No. Do you want to enjoy life? Yes. Good. Clear, clear. These are truths that when I'm thinking about it, when I'm actually actively engaging with these questions, they're clear answers. And
Right.
nobody wants to be miserable. Um, just like him. So just like, that episode, even though I haven't seen it,
Oh yeah.
the reason people tend to move through is because he made a choice. He asked himself probably that same question.
You
Do I
did.
want to be miserable? I'm suffering, I'm struggling, but do I
Right.
want to be miserable? No.
You're
So that requires
100%
a
right.
thought. That requires a shift. You have to
Yes.
consider what is in my control? What can I do? And again, it may be releasing, but like, okay, it may be letting go of an aspect of my identity. Um, for
Yeah.
example, get really personal real quick. I recently had a friend who's amazing. She passed away. And part of it was because there was an aspect of her identity she couldn't let go. And it made her spiral and it made her choose to take her life. Uh, and if she was able to think through in that moment, and again, we're all different points in our journey, and so our mental health is so important.
Right.
But it starts with recognizing, like, what do you actually want? It's like, if I don't want to be miserable, then what actions do I need to take? And that's where the real journey of finding fulfillment and joy begins. Right? Okay, I don't want to be miserable. Now I have to figure out what makes me happy or what brings me joy. And this is where happiness is actually really important. Is it I've talked to so many people and been so many coaching sessions that started out a little difficult. Because they'll be like, well, let me ask you what makes you happy. And the answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
Because they don't invest in themselves, or it's been so long since they've been happy, or like experienced positive emotions or allowed themselves to experience positive emotions. It was a real challenge, and we had to go back. And sometimes there's not enough. Sometimes it's looking outward. Like, okay, you don't remember what happiness is or what joy, but you see people who you recognize as happy or joyful. What does that feel like? What do you think they're feeling? And I have to bring it out. Your body still remembers, your brain on some level still remembers what joy and happiness feels like.
Right.
But then it can start with those little things, like you said at the earlier in the episode, the smallest little thing. Just okay, let's just get a taste of it, and it can
Right.
be happiness, and that happiness informs that pleasurable experience because joy and happiness are both pleasure based.
Yeah,
Um,
I have these definitions. I was pleasure, short-term reward, often passive. Enjoyment, active engagement, and meaning during the activity. And fulfillment is the long-term satisfaction and alignment.
yeah. So if I were to swap out the only thing if I were to adjust that a little bit, I'd rather than pleasure, I'd put happiness is short-term passive pleasure,
Hmm.
whereas like joy or enjoyment is actively infusing a pleasure, like happiness or a pleasant energy, positive energy into an experience.
Can can I just back up for 1 second because I did know
Hmm.
about your friend and thank you
Yep.
for sharing that on this episode. And I don't want to just like gloss over that because I know that was deeply
No, that's fine.
painful for you and hard. and I think like, and that's why we'll always be doing this work, always. Um, because how do you help people? And I kind of think it's this intrinsic motivation conversation and with self-efficacy theory and self-determination theory. And
Mhm.
there's lots of, different theories out there about like human behavior and
Mhm.
motivation towards taking different actions in our lives. But I think that, and I don't know the circumstances, and it's a highly individualized conversation. We both recognize that.
Mhm.
But this whole conversation of enjoyment and, and somebody feeling so desperate in their life that they don't feel like their life matters
Mhm.
is how do we move people towards it? There are these basic psychological needs that self-determination theory teaches us on autonomy, competence, and relatedness. So
Mhm.
autonomy means that you feel internally you can take steps to to have confidence, to get
Mhm.
yourself into things that you enjoy, whatever they are, academic goals, professional goals, athletic goals, personal goals, that you feel some sense of autonomy in making those decisions for yourself, some sense of control, that people aren't controlling your life, that
Yeah.
you have this basic right to freedom, you know, feeling some freedom in your life to live. And I recognize it kind of depends also where you live. We're very blessed to live in the United States and have opportunities for freedom, but that you feel that you have some freedom to make those decisions in your life, and that you also have the freedom to go after things where you build skills,
Mhm.
right? I decide I want to go back and get my PhD in my 50s, whole new skill set. Right? I was able to make that decision for myself, move forward. And so whatever it is that we feel like we have that ability to do that. And then relatedness in terms of feeling connected to things. I think a lot of times if you isolate yourself, you know, I'm not getting into introversion, extroversion. I tend to
Mhm.
be more introverted, although I really enjoy people, but I draw my energy from within. But I think that, connection, human connection. So I think it's this goal towards moving towards this living more intrinsically motivated lives. And how do you do that? How do you take small steps, to get yourself to move in that direction? And I will just say one quick thing. In my research study, I explored exercise motivations and perspectives of successful aging with older triathletes, 65 and older. And I found that these are people who are living highly physically active lifestyles, 60s, mid 60s, 70s, 80s. And I was just curious, like how, why, if you've gotten to such a positive environment and positive energy and they love what they're doing. They enjoy it. They're going out there because they're doing things that they love to do and they enjoy it and then they stick with it. So I just wanted to say that about there's so many serious mental health issues out there, but if we can teach people to just have more control over their lives, and sometimes you have to work with a counselor or a therapist, or you need people to help you kind of, move in a positive direction. There I go. I just went off the rails again.
Um,
I
yeah.
know.
So, no, no,
Unpack
no, no, you're
that.
good. So, again, like you just had a podcast episode two episodes ago, or was it three?
Which one?
With Dr. Candace Brown or
Yeah.
Condi?
Yeah. Yeah, Dossie
Yep,
Brown, Dr. Dossie Brown.
Dossie Brown. Yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
Um, that goes into who that, like the self-determination theory.
Yes.
And again, they study how intrinsic motivators, which intrinsic motivators are very important,
Hmm.
right? Because intrinsic motivation is, quite frankly, it's more stable
I like that.
than
It's
exterior. And
stable.
that's really why intrinsic motivation is so meaningful because so much of everything happening outside of us, we don't have the control we think. And that's why I always caution a big reason people get incredibly sad are really upset is because they're focused on all those external factors they can't control, or they feel like they can control. Or another big aspect of it is that think you should be able to control so much that you can't.
Oh, that's
Like
such a
so much of
strong
our control
point.
is such an illusion.
That's such a strong
Like
point. I
so
just
it's like it's more about being able
wait,
to be fluid with and
pause
like
there. Pause there for a
yeah,
second. It's such a good point. You know, let go of what you can't control. You can't control it. Can't control it. You'll find peace when you let it go. Good
yeah.
point. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, but that kind of was the point. It's like it's important to have intrinsic motivators because they're based on you.
Hmm.
But with that, and this is getting a bit off topic, so I want to bring it back. Maybe we'll have to talk about this another time. That's where your identity comes in. And I know you touched base on it with Dr. Dossie Brown as well.
Right.
Like, because your intrinsic motivators can be massively messed up. Because your intrinsic motivators are designed around your learned behavior and the way you cognitively function at this moment.
Okay.
So if you're not actively thinking about it, you may be following goals or pursuits that are deeply unfulfilling,
Wow. It's a good
but
statement.
and they're intrinsic, you feel them, they're coming from inside you or you think they are, right? Like no one's telling you actively right in this moment, this is what you should be doing.
Hmm.
But maybe somebody did, or you saw enough of people doing something similar that you feel like you should. So getting in touch with your true intrinsic motivators is a process of identity cultivation and alignment.
I love that.
But it's not like so you have to be careful when you're like, I'm doing this because I want to.
Hmm.
But are you? Are you doing this because you
Well,
were culturally designed to feel like this is what you should want to do, and you have chosen to accept it?
can I ask you a
Or
question
you
about
shouldn't?
that though? How would you
Yeah.
know? Would you know because like I've talked to coaches and, different
Mhm.
things with my research and things I've written, sports articles and my
Mhm.
podcasts. And, there are people who, let's just say, are doing things and working hard at them towards these goals, but they're not happy
Right.
in this, in that goal pursuit. So what do you do? Do you just pause? You just like, how do you, like, what do you do if you're on that, like, you're working hard at something, you're really putting a lot of effort into it and you're just not happy. What do you do? What do you do with that?
You start looking at what does make you happy.
Okay.
And again, you start looking at what makes you happy and leverage that, as I was saying earlier, to cultivate joy.
Okay.
Like your signal, so whatever your innate motivation, your drive is, that happiness, things that just bring you pleasure, the end, are where you start.
Yeah.
Like you look at now, it can come from a lot of ways. Now, it doesn't mean it's not resistance. Like I'm not, some people may disagree. I don't consider myself a complete contrarian. Um, Despite what my partner may say, I disagree with her. No, but anyway, right. Um,
Bring her on.
no, no, oh, no.
Come on, Taryn.
But, but, but like, for example, trails. I like trails. Like trails pave the way. They're easier. Some people enjoy that. I, I like, I like trails, but at this point, I like not being on trail more. Part of it is because one of my intrinsic motivators is unlocking new paths, like that lack of restriction, increasing freedom in any aspect of my mental aspect. That's why I'm always studying and learning
Right.
because the more I know, the more I can expand, the more options I have available to me to navigate a situation or to help a client, right?
Andrew,
Like I don't want to be,
one second.
oh, so again, a lot of it is just connecting to, and I realized, did a quick pause. I won't lie, my train of thought got broken a
Sorry
little bit.
about that. I had
No, it's okay. I'm a
interruption here.
squirrel wanderer. But yeah, so we're talking about freedom. But like that's intrinsic motivator for me. And I didn't have to, all that I had to do was let me guide myself and then see my reaction. Like, what is my body doing? What am I, it's like letting go of shaping and embracing again that presence. That's why mindfulness is so important and why it's picked up so much in recent times. Because more and more people are more depression, more
Yeah,
unhappiness, less satisfaction with life because we're not paying attention to the signals in the moment. Those little things like what makes me happy. Like we were talking before this about hiking with my dog. He's 12 and a half.
right,
2 years ago, yeah, 2 years ago, he tweaked his back. His he could barely use his back legs. We had to build him back up. So now we're up to 8, 9 mile hike days, but I have to hike very differently with him now than when we were doing 30-mile days in mountains in Montana because
right. Oh,
he aged quicker than I do. Um,
he's a great dog. His name's Eros.
yes, I love my dog.
He's
But
Adobe.
anyway, yeah. But anyway, but I had to change like, and I realized like we were talking that it ultimately was more important to me to do less miles but come out where both of us enjoyed that experience
Hmm.
than just for me to be able to see more and push him. So that's indicative of an intrinsic motivator. What's my larger intrinsic motivator? It's that shared experience when I'm out there with him.
Yeah,
And yes, you could say it's like, well, he's an exterior source, sure. But the only reason I care about that is because of who I am. Because there are plenty of people who don't.
right.
Right? Like it's to me, my relationship with him, my experience and the way I show up for him and for anybody is important to me.
I mean, I think that there's, and when we said the opening quote about enjoying your life, but helping someone else enjoy their life,
Mhm.
I think that's what, I also found that in my research, the patterns, the things that were motivating people be, to continue to exercise later in life and triathlon training is tough. It's three sports, swim,
Mhm.
bike, and run. And a lot of the athletes also strength train and they do
Mhm.
yoga and all kinds of other things and they hike and so you're living these highly physically active lifestyles and there was a strong pattern of enjoyment as a motivator but also sense of community,
Mhm.
being part of things, being there to cheer each other on, younger people inspired by older people inspired by younger people. It's just that that whole kind of connection with people and enjoying things and so I think so I that's what you're saying, whether it's your pet, or it's a
Yeah.
human being, like when you put yourself out there to think about you know how your attitude impacts other people, you know
Mhm.
maybe sometimes when you start to think outside yourself and you just reach out to other people, it becomes a very positive synergistic experience of enjoyment.
It also gives you another avenue
Right.
for enjoyment. Like sometimes if you're struggling to find the motivation or the joy within yourself, offering it to somebody else, having it reciprocated, they
Mm.
are reciprocating, they're giving you that energy that maybe you don't feel. And it can help to cultivate that in your mind. And there is an intrinsic, that you can say a biological imperative for community, but there is a instilled motivator inside of us
Mm-hmm.
to connect to community. But so sometimes we need to do something for other people to bring us joy
I
because
agree.
we need to connect. Other times we need to do something for ourselves, and it's very dynamic. But what it
Yes.
really comes down to is making space for it. And well, actually, no, I need to rephrase that because I actually kind of hate. I use it a lot because it's understandable, but I'm not a big fan of making space or like making space is fine, but making time for things is when you use that language is a good way to sabotage yourself because what you can't make time. You can make space. So people try to make time for enjoyment a lot of times. Like they're trying to improve their level of happiness and do more things that they enjoy by making time, but really all they're doing is forcing it somewhere it doesn't fit, and then it's not very enjoyable at all. Or it comes lackluster, and the more that happens, they end up losing their confidence that they can actually find happiness
So what do you
and
do
find
then?
enjoyment.
What do you do? How do you frame it?
Well, I guess making space would actually be what it is. Rather than
Making
trying to make
space.
time, you make space. So if you think of like a timeline, like a physical timeline like you see on a piece of paper or on your calendar, you actually create space in that calendar, a gap period to do that. One of the things that I have that I tell a lot of people with time management or emotional management is one of the best things they can do. And I think we talked about is
Sorry.
pause at transitions. I know we're running late.
No, no, no. This is why I had to pause again because my chocolate lab, who I adore, is
Oh,
behind me. She's recovering from ACL surgery.
oh, right.
And we talk about
Um,
Eros, and I guess you can see her back there today. She's doing great, but I I want to get her back to, she's a lab. She loves to run, she loves to swim. I want to get her back to that. So, and I enjoy taking her down to the beach and throwing the ball, and it's, it brings a lot of enjoyment to me. And it's a journey. It's a journey, traveling that journey with my dog. So,
yeah,
I apologize for that. But this is real life, guys. We have a blizzard and they're stuck, and I'm trying to like keep the podcast going. Okay. So I've heard it as non-negotiable time, where you start to set up a schedule and you start to look at your life is making sure there are things in your life that are not negotiable, and they have to stay in your
mm,
life. They have to stay in your life for your mental health and your physical health and the relationships in your lives. You have to water the garden. Got to take care of the garden, right? That's the
yeah,
relationships. And so I've heard it that way. And the first time I heard that, it sounded very selfish, because we don't necessarily allow ourselves to look at things sometimes that way. But I think when we do, we start to live healthier lifestyles, more well-rounded, because we are learning to enjoy our lives. I wanted to ask you just real quick because we didn't really touch on it, and I'm
hmm
not sure how long we've been going actually, but there is a physiological component to all of this, right?
hmm
So we can't just look at it like as a like psychological component and mental health. And I mean there are physiological things going on in our body too that just make us feel better, you know. Um I just think it's important to understand. I always think it's important, I learned this in my PhD program. I took two courses, cardiovascular response to exercise, neuromuscular exercise physiology. And just the whole exercise physiology platform is to understand really what is going on inside our bodies, on the cellular level, and how, and the neurotransmitters that send chemicals and signals through our
hmm
body. And so I just think it's important to understand that's it's a huge part of of our health too. And I don't know that if you're in human performance and you're in these fields, you think about it, you understand it. But if you're listening to this and that's really not your, where you're at or what you've been studying, it's just important to understand that positivity and enjoyment and learning how to reduce stress and, taking care of your body, all these things that are within health promotion, it helps you with the inside of your body too be healthier. And ultimately, we want to live healthy, long lives. So, and it's always kind of like the goal of all these conversations, how do we how do we live healthy, productive lives? Um,
Yeah,
from the inside out. I always say from the inside out. And the reason I say from the inside out is because it starts from the inside and then
yeah.
we start to manifest it on the outside. Or maybe it goes both ways. I don't know. Maybe it goes both ways. I'm not sure. Yeah, you put a
I
smile
mean,
on your face.
it does. It
Maybe
obviously it does
just
go both
release all
ways.
kinds of endorphins.
Yeah.
Now I
Well,
feel
so
great.
there we go. So fear and excitement.
Okay.
Fear creates an excited response in the body, right?
Yeah.
So does
Stress.
joy. So does excitement. They
Exactly.
they both prime you to take action, but the chemicals released are different.
Yes.
And like as you like quote, the obstacle is the way, right?
Yes. I love that
That's
book.
part of it too. Like so your stress tolerance, what actually feels like a threat changes over time. Like that's why they say do hard things. If you do
Yes.
hard things, life will be easy. If you do easy things, life will be hard. I think that was Les Brown in a long time. But either way, yeah.
That's a
But
profound
or a lot
statement
of
there.
but it's true because if if I lift 50-pound weights every day, how hard is it for me to lift a 20-pound weight? But if you lift a 20-pound weight every day, how hard is it going to be when you need to move 50?
It's true.
So, and that's kind of where that comes in. So you're like your body creates a stress tolerance, and stressor is just resistance created in any form, right? Uh, on in a physiological level, that's really what it is, and our physiological capacity does affect our mental capacity to manage. So stress tolerance in our body does correlate. There's studies that have proven it does correlate to mental tolerance, mental resistance as well. But back to the fear to excitement,
Hmm.
chemicals again are different. We're activating different pathways, like the dopamine pathway. People are like, that's bad, but it's a motivation facilitator, right? Serotonin, you know, that when you're happy, you're enjoying, you're experiencing these things, they're encouraging expansion, they're encouraging space. Um, and whereas fear, still you're heightened up, you're getting that adrenaline, you're
Right.
getting that drive, but you're also getting cortisol. And cortisol actually helps you mitigate stress as well, but it becomes a problem, as you could probably explain in more detail, when it becomes chronic, if you're under constant overwhelm where your body is not adapted to the level of stress or at a level of stress where your body can't adapt and you're pushing it too hard. So you're relying too much on that cortisol or these fear, there's stress tolerance. When you're in your stress tolerance mode of operation in your physical body and the chemicals are released, enjoyment really allows that system to calm down and engage these other drugs
Hmm.
that still improve motivation and drive, but in a healthier way. So it's a way to help maintain balance with it, like regulate your body, your physiological existence, the
Hmm.
things that give you enjoyment or pleasure, so that you're not constantly leaning on your stress coping mechanisms. I don't know why Eric quoted that. It's actual stress
It's
coping
okay.
mechanisms, but
No,
whatever.
I'm just thinking there's so many things I could say to all that and I learned so much from you. I guess the thing that comes to mind is like we're living, breathing organisms. Okay. We have one body, right? This is the body that we were born with. Modern medicine gives us lots of opportunities to make corrections to maybe some of the poor choices that we've made in our lives, right?
Mhm,
Medications, surgeries, you know, heart surgery. I mean, there's lots of, I mean, this conversation needs to recognize the importance of medicine, right?
mhm.
But ultimately, and Dr. Gibbons talked about it on one of the past episodes about the long game in human performance. And I asked him, what do you see the most in ER? He's an ER physician for over 20 years.
Yep.
It's a great podcast episode. Highly recommend listening to him. He's just like you. I actually connected the two of you because you're equally intelligent with just understanding the stuff. And what he said is what he sees the most are things that are like modifiable lifestyle habits. And so these are things that maybe we can take more control in our lives. And so this conversation about enjoyment fits into this human performance, health promotion framework because, you know, I think we're all really good at stress. I mean, I went out to breakfast or lunch, I don't remember what it was with my brother, and my shoulders were like, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "What do you mean, what's wrong?" It's like your body language. Like, what is wrong? You're like totally stressed out. And so I think we're very comfortable living with stress. I don't know that or maybe I just am. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm projecting onto like my listeners, the things that I'm dealing with. I don't
Definitely
think
an
we're
expectation.
right, but I don't think we're equally as comfortable as like this kind of lighter floating enjoyment type of narrative. And that's why I really wanted to have it because I think that you've helped since I've known you, you've helped me understand like how to kind of frame stress, let it go, let things go. So I want to ask our listeners, and I want to make sure we've touched on all the points that you wanted to talk about on this podcast episode. But I just want to ask our listeners at this moment, what do you enjoy doing? Write it down. What do you enjoy doing? It's not a complicated question. Sometimes, and Dossie said it, Dr. Dossie Brown said it. I was like so surprised because I say the same thing. Like, what did you enjoy doing in your childhood? You know, are you doing that in your adult? Like when we're kids, we kind of figure out, you know, I love to play outside. I love to jump in puddles. Same person as an older adult. Ask yourself what you enjoy doing it in, and it could be academically, professionally, athletically, personal goals. I mean, it looks different for all of us. Then ask yourself, is that thing or those things that you enjoy doing, are they woven into your life right now? Right? Look at your calendar. Does your calendar reflect things that you enjoy doing? Have you made space? We're not going to say time, we're going to say space for those things in your life. And if the answer is great, reach out to me. I want to have you on my show. I want to know how you're successful at it so we can help other people and teach other people. Okay? I mean that. And if you're not, start taking small steps towards that because life is short. And if you watch that documentary with Eric Dane, handsome, everything, had everything. He had everything. But he lived with this mindset that, always not where he wanted to be at that moment. And then he got ALS. He never thought he'd get ALS. It's just a powerful reminder that we should live every day of our life with meaning and purpose and be grateful. I'm so grateful for Andrew coming into my life and teaching me things. I'm, just so I know it's a little heavy. I tend to get kind of serious sometimes, philosophical, but it's the whole point of this podcast is to live your best life today, right now.
Nothing to say. We could talk about stuff for hours, but nothing to say.
Yeah, don't
I
waste
agree.
time. Don't waste time, people. You know, I'm not telling you to go do something sporadic. Things take time. Patience is important in pursuing goals and finding enjoyment. Sometimes you got to set yourself up for success. It takes time, but at least, take some control over those actions to move your life forward. So, with that said, I want to make sure, is there anything that you want to, I want to give you the final word.
All that I'd say is if you are on the opposite side where you are bad at making space and you think you can't, think smaller because you may just be thinking too big when you say you don't have, there's no time or there's nowhere I can make space. It can it can be a simple integration, a moment or two, happiness, presence. How long are you in the present? Milliseconds?
Yeah. So good. So
Sometimes.
good.
So you just have to think smaller. If you think you can't make time, think smaller. There's a point that you can. Even if it's you get up and you put your hand to your chest just to remind yourself that, hey, you're here with yourself. Or
Right.
you just smile in the mirror. It doesn't matter. And you can go even smaller than that. It can just be a matter of presence and just observe one thing that you put into your space, whatever space you in. If you created your space in your home, there's a reason everything lives there. Find that
Yeah.
one thing that you brought in and remember why you brought it. Why you're
Good.
doing all the other chores you don't want to do. So just there's always a point of happiness that can be found. It doesn't have to be big. It can be the smallest little thing, but eventually they build. That's it.
And there you have it. Mountain wisdom, because he just spent a few days out in the mountains. And I saw if you want to follow his social media presence, he just put some really great information out, coaching tips. It's at Andrew
Oh yeah.
Schubauer on Instagram, and it's SCHU and like Eddie Bauer, Baeur,
You
Andrew Schubauer. Go ahead.
yeah, Baur.
BA, sorry. Say it one more time.
I think it should be if they're watching this.
Oh, you can
S
see it.
and yeah, you can see my last name.
Yeah. So
All right,
welcome
but
back
anyway.
from there it is. SCHUBAUER. Anyhow, welcome
Mm,
back from the mountains. Thank you for bringing your wisdom back
thanks.
out for all of us to learn. And thank you for listening to us on the PhD Journey Unplugged. Andrew, hope to have you back. I always learn so much when you come on. And wishing everybody t enjoyment, go out and enjoy your life today.
Let's go enjoy the snow with our dogs.
We're gonna go out and play in the snow for sure. The blizzard of February 2026. All right,
Later.
everybody. Thank you. As always, we're grateful to have this opportunity to educate and motivate on the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. Thank you. Bye.